to feel like you have no control over your own life. And you would think as a business owner, you shouldn't feel that way because you have control over your business.
I just get overwhelmed and I feel like I can't even start the first editing task. My mind will start to manufacture things I better do first.
I think it's because our brain goes to whatever requires the least amount of thought process. So that's why I'm like, oh yeah, I need to water the plants right now. I feel like in my head, I'm constantly telling myself, Shiree, work smarter, not harder. I don't have to paint the whole mural with a 1-inch brush.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be where you are. This is the Emerging Artist Podcast. I'm Scott Markowitz, and I'm here with Shiree Nichole, and we're going to be talking about burnout. How do artists cope with burnout?
Not very well. It's a self-inflicted thing.
Stay tuned for our next episode.
How many times have you gone through your life where you've had complete burnout, do you think?
Yeah, I've had some major episodes about 3 times in my life. I thought I just couldn't even get out of bed at times. Like I was burned out so bad that I thought my life was over. So, we're laughing now, but definitely depression was a real thing. Burnout was just kind of the tip of the iceberg. Guys, let us know if you can relate to this, because
it is. I can't count how many times I have felt burnout. It's very debilitating. I actually did a little bit of research on burnout and the definition of it. It's beyond just tired. It's chronic fatigue where you feel completely frustrated and like you have no control. To feel like you have no control over your own life. And you would think as a business owner, you shouldn't feel that way because you have control over your business, but that isn't how you feel. At times in my life when it's been that way is basically my own fault. I overbooked myself. Just too many jobs, one after another on top of each other, too close with no breaks in between, hardly sleeping. So I'm slowly learning to schedule more time in between jobs, time to myself to kind of regroup and recuperate. How about you?
Well, yeah. So for me, I experience burnout like at least twice or 3 times a week. I'll describe how it manifests for me. I'll sit down in front of my computer and I have things to edit, right? I'm thinking so far ahead, like, oh my gosh, after I edit this, then I have to edit that, then I have to edit the next thing. And then there's a 4th thing that I have to edit that just pops in my head and I just, I get overwhelmed. And so I feel like I can't even start the first editing task. So my mind will start to manufacture things I better do first. Like, oh, you know what? I need to go check the pool filter.
You water the plant. Yeah.
Oh, I have to walk the dogs. Oh, I better call my daughter and see if she remembered to order her medication. She's 27 years old. No, she's never forgotten to do anything, let alone something that pops into my mind right now. All these things just start to pile up in my head. So, Shiree, I'm curious if it's similar for you.
I completely understand what you're talking about, being overwhelmed when you sit down to do something. For me, even this week, so I was out of town, came back in, and I have numerous mural studies and sample boards to do, dragging my feet. And I think it's because our brain goes to whatever requires the least amount of thought process. So that's why I'm like, oh yeah, I need to water the plants right now instead. Sit down and start looking at make my list of all the sample boards I need to do. And then, very easily find myself doing things that are not on my list of priorities just because it's easier. And one of the things that I, like even yesterday I did was I had a big list and I just tell myself mentally, okay, just focus on one thing. Just do this one sample board. Maybe just mask the sample board and leave it at that. Do that and then move on to the next thing. But it takes some mental discipline to work through it.
I love what you just said. Like you're going to start a sample board and then you went to the very first step of making the sample board. And I think that is the key to overcoming that feeling of overwhelm and to get over the burnout hump. It does take discipline, but it is simple and it is just, start. So when you can just start, hopefully you'll be able to complete the first step and you'll spill over into doing the second step. But don't beat yourself up if it doesn't. Just be content if you just get that first step done, right? That's the key. Not allowing yourself to spiral into this vortex of self-loathing.
And going to bed.
Yeah, well, this stuff can really side rail you, right? The burnout happens, right? But instead of letting things pile up, what if you can just, get that first step done and then maybe move on to a different job, the first step in that job. And then that can go a long way. And I have found that if I really allow myself to get very focused on that first step, it very often will lead to the second step and maybe step 3 and 4. Yeah, because my mind gets into it, even though I have to trick it. Sometimes it'll just latch on to the task and my ADHD will kick in and I'll just be able to go. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes, I force myself to do that first step and that's really all I can muster. Right?
Oh, yeah. I know all about that.
I was telling you that my wife and I just got back from a vacation in Puerto Rico and I was reading an article online one evening while we were getting ready to go to bed. And I was like, you know what, Tina? I think I have ADHD. And she looked at me and she laughed. She was just like, yeah, tell me something I don't know. She was a psychology major in college and she's like, yeah, no duh. We're just figuring that out now. Okay.
And there's some things I've talked to other artists about having ADHD, and I believe it's estimated that most artists actually do. Yeah. And that's why our brains can switch to so many different things. And we can be good at so many different things that are opposite from each other. Like I can do bold abstract art, but in the same day do soft flamingos. It's hard to believe the same person does those. And so in that aspect, it's really cool for your brain to be able to function in that way. But then on the burnout level, when you are having such a hard time focusing, that's where the ADHD is really tough. Something that I do, and I have a good friend who's a designer, that she does the same thing. She puts herself on a timer. And so when I start feeling that just heavy, overwhelmed, like, oh, I can't get started because my list is too many things on the list. So I'll put it like for 15 minutes and stay focused on doing these sample boards for only 15 minutes. And then when that timer goes off, regroup and reassess. Well, you know what? Like you said, you go beyond, your mind attaches to it and you're able to continue forward in the next step process. It's exciting to see what you can get done in 15 minutes or 30 minutes. If I'm on a job that is very detailed oriented, I'll put myself on a 30-minute or an hour timer and see how much I can get done within that time frame. And that helps me stay on task. Last week I was in Montana working on a mural, and it was very detail oriented. It had 11 different colors, which is more than my average mural. I can only handle mural work about 4 to 6 hours a day. It's really mentally exhausting sometimes. That's where a timer works good for me. Do you do that?
I do that all the time, and I'll set little rewards. After the time's up, I'll tell myself I'm going to edit for 45 minutes, and if I can get the skeleton of the show done in 45 minutes, I'll have a Tootsie Roll. I like that because I'm like 8 years old.
I like that.
But Tootsie Rolls, hey.
Tootsie Rolls, they never go out of style for whatever age you are.
I do think that's an effective way to do it. Like, set a timer. And, you were talking about it earlier, it's when you start doing a mural, do you think that in general artists get burned out easier because our work has the emotional component to it?
I could totally see that being the case.
Because we put ourselves into the work.
Yeah, it can be mentally exhausting. Not that you don't love it. I love it. And I get so excited about the end results. And the best part's taking the pictures to see what you accomplished and the reward of your client and how excited they are. That is wonderful to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an emotional attachment to all those things. Yeah, very much so. And then there's also, I think, the aspect of perfectionism.
Oh, yes.
That and the burnout together. It's a great combo. You're an artist. You're striving to get things as perfect as you can. Perfection's not possible, though. So that heaps up as a hurdle that your brain pushes up against.
That's something that I'm trying to work on personally. I had a cousin tell me in my mid-20s to read the birth order books by Dr. Kevin Lehman. As a firstborn girl, I needed definitely to read those. And when I read it, I'm like, boy, I've really been irritating a lot of people for a long time because of my perfectionism tendencies. I appreciated her telling me that and reading those books, and I've reread them throughout the years. He has one specifically firstborns that is really good. So yeah, that's a tendency I need to work on. And I find if I'm on a project that is more challenging for me, requiring a lot of my thought process and emotion, I can get frustrated and I feel like it's not in my head looking as good, as perfect as I want it to look. And so I have learned when I start heading down that path and I start getting frustrated is to stop and revisit it the next day.
Yeah.
And I'll come in the next day and I'll look at my work and I'm like, what on earth was I even upset about? It was all in my head.
Oh, yes.
And I've had other people tell me what I see is not what other people see. Do you feel that way?
Oh, yep. That happens to me all the time. I'll give you a quick example. I was working on a project for a local real estate broker. And they wanted us to record over the course of a year and a half the construction of a luxury home. We came out with our drones and shot it before they poured the foundation. And then, every couple of weeks we would go out and shoot the exact same shots from the exact same position over and over again. And then we can piece them together so you could see a time lapse of this home being built. It was going to be really cool. So I had, so much anxiety about the project because it was such a big project and it was such a long period of time. And when I went to edit the project, I made a big deal out of like trying to make the edit very elaborate.
Right.
I wanted it to be more grand. And I spent hours and hours trying to build custom transitions between the different shots. And my business partner came in to look at it and he's like, no. I ended up thinking about it so much I made it confusing to the viewer. It didn't even look like my normal editing style. And he was like, what if you just tried cuts, instead of these crazy transitions? And I was just like, yeah, that would be really good. Because, initially I tried to make it perfect.
Oh, I feel like in my head, I'm constantly telling myself, Shiree, work smarter, not harder. I don't have to paint the whole mural with a 1-inch brush. You know? And why is that? Artists or the painters, why do we pick the smallest detail brush to paint on a huge canvas? It's crazy.
That is funny. That's true.
There's a lot of overthinking that goes on, don't you think?
Definitely. Overthinking is fun, and it contributes to burnout.
It does.
Yeah. So how do we simplify, and how do we stop overthinking, and how do we stop the burnout? Can you think of some strategies that you use in your practice to alleviate burnout?
Touched on in our previous podcast about investing in yourself. I think that has to be a key, prioritizing your own emotional, physical, mental health daily. For me, doing things that set the tone in the morning. I like to read the scriptures in the morning. I sit by the pool. I get to see the outside and all my plants, and I just decompress, and it puts my mind in a really calm mindset. And the other thing is, I try really hard in the morning to not look at social media, emails, text messages, any of that. I do my studying and I do all that first. And then after I'm done with taking care of that and 2 cups of strong coffee, and then I start addressing the business side of it. But I think first thing in the morning, prioritizing my own mental and emotional mindset is something that's been helping me.
Oh, absolutely. I think for me, part of that mindset work has been learning how to meditate. And you talked about going outside. Yes, I like to meditate while I'm walking. I like that combination of physical activity with self-awareness. I think that's the number one way I can mitigate my burnout. As I mentioned earlier, I have not been successful in eliminating it, and I don't think I ever will be, to be honest, but being practiced and able to leverage the skills of meditation has definitely helped tremendously. Through meditation, I've learned to be aware of what I'm thinking.
I agree. I love meditation. I think that's essential.
When I first started mindset work, I learned how to meditate and started to get good at it. I was astonished at the kinds of thoughts that I noticed were going through my head. I was never aware of them before, right? So, just that's the first step of trying to turn it around, is just becoming aware that it's happening. And the thoughts that are generating within myself that have led to the burnout. So yeah, that's definitely the big thing. Once I'm aware, then I can start doing something about it. The other things that help, at least in my experience, have been getting more sleep.
Yes. I wonder actually when you sleep, because you are so busy. You have so much going on, and I'm like, holy cow.
It's been a challenge, yeah. I do try to protect at least 8 hours. I'm not always successful. There are definitely seasons in a video production based business where it's just not possible.
Yeah.
Just being honest, to get all your sleep all the time, but I'm getting better at it. And so I do try to protect as much from my sleep time as I can. And that definitely is huge in protecting myself. Because, the sleep allows me to be more aware of my thoughts. Right? When you're tired, thoughts can just slip past you without notice. And that's dangerous. It can be... It could not like physically dangerous, but I mean, like, that's when real problems start.
Yeah, it's true. And then there's so many difficult side effects that come from burnout. When you're in that mode, you realize you're compromised. And then everything suffers in your life. Family, your relationships with your friends, your own work, certainly yourself.
Definitely. So other things that might help with burnout? I think having fun once in a while.
Maybe more than once in a while.
Yeah, more than once in a while.
You know, something I've been doing now for a couple of years is when I travel for work, I'm kind of rejuvenated and re-inspired by nature. You and I've talked about that before. So I deliberately, if I'm traveling in Florida, I'll look for different botanical gardens I've never visited, a museum, or just some points of interest that I've never been to before. And I get all excited about doing that. And so that does help me deal with burnout too, because I realize that work is important, but that's not the most important thing in my life. And my work, I don't want that to define who I am as a person. I hope it's my qualities and traits as a person. When I do those things for myself, it puts things back into perspective for me. Because how much do you think about how much time you have in a day and how much time you spent actually working in that day? And what percentage of our life do we spend working versus enjoying interesting and exciting things, countries we want to explore, friendships, relationships? Maybe stepping back and seeing a simplified life is a better deal than a life crammed full of many material pursuits. Of those things have its place, but what are we striving so hard that we suffer burnout for in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? What's the whole purpose? What's your end game? What's your why? It so often comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah. So an ongoing process for each one of us individually.
Another thing I think can help with burnout, and we talked about this a little bit in a different episode. We agreed that we need a whole episode on people pleasing at some point. I think the way to avoid burnout is to learn to say no.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have to take action on every single opportunity.
It's not easy, but I know myself, I'm getting better about it. And I don't have to offer an explanation why either. Just no. And then shut my mouth. Don't try to apologize and explain why. That's hard.
Yes, that's so, oh my gosh, I relate. That's so hard because I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. And you go through some sob story about like something's going on in your life. And then you're just like, wow, I just told them way too much information. Yes.
Yes. Oh, I hate it when I give too much information. And I'm like, no, I didn't want that client to ever know that about my personal life, and that, but it's already out there. It's sad.
So why do we do that?
Yeah.
It's the burnout. So I guess, guys, that there you have it. Burnout's a thing. As an artist, you're going to experience burnout, but you're not in this alone. You've got our podcast to help, and you've got other people that you can reach out to. It doesn't need to be something that completely halts your progress. You can definitely develop some strategies to deal with it and make it a productive part of your process. You know, burnout is just part of the process. I think sometimes it's good to experience that burnout because, you know, maybe this is a wacky way to think about it, but sometimes I feel grateful that I'm experiencing burnout because it helps me to really bear down and start working harder sometimes. You know, so knowing that, you know, this is a signal sometimes to get serious. You know, I got deadlines or something coming up, and the burnout is just like kind of just telling me that I need to concentrate and focus on that. I better do something about this.
And you're learning about yourself.
Yeah.
Be willing to make the changes, not beat yourself up for it. And just because you suffer burnout doesn't mean you're a failure.
No, it does not. Shiree and I have been there. Yeah, let's leave it at that, guys. I think that's pretty much it. If you found this helpful, I invite you guys to subscribe to the podcast. Shiree, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about their emerging artist business or get some coaching?
Sure. The best way is at my website, ShireeNichole.com, ShireeNichole.com.
And if you'd like to reach me, email me at scott@reinventionstudiolab.com. For the time being, guys, while we're recording this, I will respond to every single email personally. So please reach out if you have any questions about being an emerging artist, and you could always see some of the things that we're up to at reinventionstudiolab.com. Rock on.